Carmelita stirred her tea slowly, watching the sun drip like molten gold over the rooftops of the favela. The air was thick with heat and the distant echo of samba music. Her arthritic fingers trembled slightly, but her eyes, sharp, cold, alert, scanned the narrow street like they always did. She had lived through wars, dictatorships, a husband who vanished without a trace. Nothing surprised her anymore. Then the dog barked. Low. Guttural. She froze. A second later, the gate flew open with a metallic scream. 3 men burst into her yard, their faces hidden behind cheap black ski masks. Guns out. Voices loud. On your knees, Velha. Where's the money? One grabbed her arm and shoved her down, hard. Her teacup shattered on the stone. Carmelita didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just looked up at the one with the pistol to her forehead and smiled. A slow, wicked smile. You boys have made a very big mistake, she said in perfect, measured Portuguese. What did she say? One of them asked. But before anyone could answer, the heavy front door creaked open. And a voice came from inside the house. Calm. Deep. Chilling. Step away from my mother. The gunman turned, too fast. The one in front dropped his weapon. The others went pale. The man standing in the doorway was tall, dressed in black, with tattoos crawling up his neck like smoke. His eyes? Cold enough to freeze fire. One of the intruders whispered, terrified. El Sombra. And that was when the real fear began. The name hit the air like a bullet. El Sombra. The shadow. The man whose enemies disappeared, sometimes piece by piece. Stories about him traveled through the slums of Brazil like ghost stories, whispered, doubted, feared. Now he was standing in the flesh, one hand behind his back, like he didn't even need to show a weapon to kill. The masked men froze. Even the bravest one couldn't bring himself to raise his gun. His finger trembled over the trigger, but his eyes were already dead with panic. Carmelita, still on her knees, adjusted her shawl and muttered. These kids today, no respect. El Sombra stepped off the threshold and into the fading light. His boots echoed across the stone, slow, deliberate. You pointed a gun at my mother, he said. Now, you're going to ask yourself, was that really worth it? One of the men, young, maybe 20, broke. He bolted for the gate. Bang. A single shot. Clean. Right between the shoulder blades. He dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. The other 2 were on their knees now. Begging. One of them even tried to pull off his mask, as if a bare face could make him less guilty. We didn't know. We swear. We thought she was just some old woman. El Sombra looked at them like they weren't even human. Just insects. Dirt. He took a few steps forward, crouched down, and said calmly. She is just some old woman. But she's my old woman. Then he stood. Bang. Bang. Both fell forward. No drama. No speeches. Just silence. Birds scattered from the wires above. Carmelita finally stood up, brushing dust from her knees. She didn't look at the bodies. Just at her son. I told you not to come wearing those loud boots, she said. The whole neighborhood will be awake now. El Sombra allowed himself a flicker of a smile. You always notice everything, May. But as they turned to go inside, a figure in the shadows watched from the alley. Unmoving. Listening. Holding a phone to their ear. Recording everything. The figure didn't move for a long time. Hidden behind a crumbling wall, half-shadowed by a torn laundry sheet flapping from a window above, they stood still as stone. The phone in their hand was still recording. The red light blinked once, twice, then stopped. They slipped the device into their pocket and backed away, one step at a time, until they vanished into the dark veins of the favela. Inside the house, Carmelita poured herself a fresh cup of tea. Her hands were steady now. "How long are you staying?" she asked without looking up. El Sombra wiped blood off his hands with a towel from her kitchen. The towel had little blue flowers on it. He was careful not to tear it. "A day. Maybe 2. Things are getting hot in Sao Paulo." "You brought that heat with you, Filio." He didn't deny it. He just nodded, quietly. Then. "You're still safe here?" Carmelita looked at him. "I've never been safe, Jorge. But I've always been respected. There's a difference." They shared a long silence. The kind only blood relatives can stand comfortably. Outside, a motorcycle engine revved once, then faded into the night. A storm was coming. Not the kind that brings rain, but the kind that leaves bodies in its wake. Meanwhile, across the city. Inside a high-rise office filled with cigar smoke and polished guns, a man in a white suit watched a replay of the phone recording. He leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "He's back," he said to no one in particular. "The shadow returns to his roots." The lights from the TV screen flickered across his scarred face. "Send word to Los Cados. Tell them the target has resurfaced." A man in the corner nodded and slipped away. The man in the white suit stared at the paused video, at Carmelita's face. "Let's see how much pain that old woman can take before he breaks." The van rumbled through the back roads outside Rio, headlights off, windows blacked out. Inside, 6 men sat in silence, dressed in matching gray tactical gear. Each of them carried weapons not even standard police could afford. No names. No talking. Only one rule: don't fail. Their leader, a man called Navarro, checked his watch. His face was covered in burns, a gift from a job gone wrong years ago. He wore the scars like armor. Target, El Sombra. Primary objective, extraction. Secondary, his mother. He looked around the cabin. "If anyone gets sentimental, I shoot them myself." No one responded. That was loyalty. Or fear. Or both. The van sped up. Back in the favela, Jorge, El Sombra, sat on the rooftop of his mother's house, a cigarette burning between his fingers. He didn't smoke. He just liked the smell. Reminded him of his father. Reminded him of the quiet before a kill. His phone buzzed. A message. No name. Just an icon, a burning cross. He stared at it. Los Cados. They hadn't been active in years. Not since he buried 3 of their captains alive and burned their opium fields to ash. He thought they were gone. He was wrong. Downstairs, Carmelita hummed an old lullaby. She had no idea that a kill team was already in the neighborhood. Already watching. Already planning. Jorge put out the cigarette. His eyes scanned the rooftops around him. He saw nothing. But something felt off. Then he heard it, the click of metal against stone. A sniper setting up shop. He dropped flat. A bullet ripped through the chair he had been sitting on. The war had come home. The second shot missed by inches, shattering a clay pot behind Jorge's head. Dirt and ceramic rained down as he rolled across the rooftop, hugging the floor, pulling a pistol from beneath his jacket. He didn't fire back. Not yet. He counted. 1 sniper. At least 2 spotters. Maybe more on the ground. Los Cados didn't come to scare. They came to finish. Jorge whispered into his earpiece, an old habit from cartel days, even though he didn't expect anyone to answer. But someone did. "Been waiting for your dumb ass to call," a gravelly voice said. "You owe me 5 lives, Sombra." Guess I'll collect tonight. Ramiro. Ex-cartel hitman. Loyal to no one. Deadly to everyone. I'll double it, Jorge said. Now you're talking. A shot cracked from a building across the alley. Ramiro had entered the game. Jorge used the distraction to slip back inside, descending into the narrow stairwell. As he reached the second floor, a grenade rolled through the window. No pin. Just silence. He grabbed a mattress, threw it over the grenade, and dove behind the wall. Boom. The blast rocked the house. Dust filled the air. The floor shook under his feet. May, he shouted, coughing. He pushed through the smoke into the kitchen, and stopped cold. Carmelita stood in the middle of the room, calm as a nun in prayer, holding her ancient double-barreled shotgun. One body lay at her feet. The chest cavity torn open. This one called me a bitch, she said. I taught him manners. Jorge blinked. You're insane. I raised you. What did you expect? Suddenly, silence. The shooting stopped. No footsteps. No voices. Too quiet. Then came the sound of a motorbike, revving closer and closer. Jorge ran to the front window. A lone rider. No gun. No helmet. Just a brown envelope in hand. He dropped it at the gate and sped off into the night. Jorge walked out slowly, picked it up. Inside, a photo. A surveillance still. Carmelita. Sitting on the porch. Drinking tea. On the back, in thick black marker. Next time, we take her fingers. The photo burned fast. Jorge held it in the sink, watching the flames lick at the edges of Carmelita's face. His jaw clenched tight enough to crack. They're watching us, he said. They got eyes everywhere. Carmelita sipped her tea. Let them watch. You don't understand, May. This isn't over. This was just the warning. She set her cup down with a clink. Looked him dead in the eyes. You think I don't know what a warning looks like? I used to send them. Silence. A sharp one. Jorge stared. What? Carmelita stood up, slower now, as if the weight of memory made her bones heavier. You think your darkness came from nowhere, Filio? You think you were born a wolf? She turned, walked to a cupboard, and pulled out a rusted old tin box. Inside, letters. Photographs. A medallion shaped like a snake. And a gun. Small, antique, but deadly. Before you were born. I was part of something. A crew. We ran numbers, protection. But it grew. Got ugly. I left when I got pregnant with you. She handed him a photo. 4 people. Young. Smiling. Holding machetes and champagne. One of them, unmistakably Carmelita, 25 and wild-eyed. Another. Navarro. The burned face. The man who now leads Los Cados. He was your uncle once, she said softly. My brother. We bled together. Then he betrayed us all. Jorge felt like the air had been ripped from his lungs. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I knew you'd go looking. And the day you crossed paths with him, one of you was going to die. Jorge stared at the photo. Navarro's eyes stared right back. Even then, they were hollow. He slipped the medallion into his pocket. Then let's make sure it's him. Elsewhere, in a basement lined with candles and steel. Navarro was kneeling before a shrine of bones and silver. A tattooed priestess traced symbols on his scarred back in blood. The old blood returns, she whispered. It demands sacrifice. Navarro opened his eyes. Then let's burn everything he loves. The rain came down like knives. Jorge stood at the edge of the abandoned warehouse near the docks, the place Navarro once used to bury secrets. Now, it was his turn to uncover them. Ramiro was already inside, clearing the place floor by floor. Silent. Precise. He moved like a ghost with a vendetta. Jorge held the medallion in his palm. The snake-shaped metal felt heavier now, as if it carried the weight of blood. Old blood. Family blood. He thought of his mother. Of what Navarro had once meant to her. Of what he'd become. "Let's end this," he muttered. Inside, Navarro sat in a chair, flanked by 2 guards. His white suit now paired with body armor. The burned side of his face was painted red, tribal markings curling around the scars. He smiled when he saw Jorge enter. "Look at you. All grown up. All righteous. This ends tonight." Navarro chuckled. "That's what your mother said. Right before she begged me not to kill you." Jorge didn't flinch, but the rage in his eyes spoke louder than any words. "She gave you a life," Navarro said. "And you repaid her by becoming the same monster she ran from. I became what you made me." Navarro leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Then prove it." And just like that, all hell broke loose. The guards lunged. Jorge dropped one with a shot to the throat, rolled behind a crate as bullets shredded the air around him. Ramiro burst through a side door, shotgun blazing. 2 more men fell. Navarro vanished into the smoke. Jorge chased him through rusted corridors and blood-stained floors, until finally, they reached the old boxing ring in the center of the warehouse. Fists now. No guns. Just them. The fight was brutal. Bone against bone. Teeth cracked. Blood sprayed. Years of betrayal poured out in every punch. "You were like a father to me," Jorge roared, slamming Navarro into the ropes. "Then kill me like a son would." Navarro spat, laughing through broken teeth. Jorge lifted his gun. Pointed it at Navarro's head. But something in him paused. Too much of the past. Too much of his mother's face in his mind. Then. Bang. A shot rang out. Navarro's eyes widened. He looked down. Blood spreading across his chest. He turned slowly. Carmelita stood behind him, holding that old silver pistol. Smoke curling from the barrel. "You should have stayed dead," she said. Navarro collapsed. Jorge turned to her, stunned. "How did you even?" "I followed you," she said, reloading. "You think I'd let my idiot son fight the devil alone?" By morning, the warehouse was nothing but smoke and whispers. Bodies lay still beneath broken rafters. The city, as always, moved on, unconcerned with the violence that lived and died in its forgotten corners. Jorge stood over Navarro's body. His knuckles bruised. Lip split. Shirt soaked in blood, some his, most not. Carmelita sat on an overturned crate nearby, calmly pouring tea from a cracked thermos she'd brought in her purse. "Want some?" she asked. He stared at her. "You just killed a man. I've killed before. I just don't make a show of it." He sat beside her, the adrenaline finally leaving his body like a tide. "So, what now?" She sipped her tea. Thought for a long moment. "Now, you disappear. For real this time. Not into smoke and guns. Into something, small. Quiet." He didn't answer. "They'll come for you," she added. "The rest of Los Cados. The corrupt cops. The enemies you forgot you made. Let them," he muttered. "I've got nothing left to lose." She turned to him sharply. "You have me. And as long as I breathe, you don't get to talk like a ghost." Jorge nodded, slowly. Then handed her the snake medallion. "I don't want it." She took it, gently. Good. It never belonged to you anyway. 1 week later. The news called it a gang war turned massacre. They said Navarro's body had been found with no ID, no prints. They never mentioned the old woman seen walking calmly from the scene. Carmelita returned to her porch. She drank her tea. Watched the street. Jorge was gone. Off the grid. No one knew where. Not even her. But sometimes, when the wind blew just right, and the air smelled faintly of gunpowder and jasmine, she smiled. Because monsters may leave. But shadows? They always come home.